Hi, I'm James Tamon, and I'm a Boot Hill gunfighter here at Boot Hill Museum. And this is a new segment for new connections to the Old West. Old Blue. Wake up, boy, Davy opens his eyes. Cookie was standing over him. I'll be right there, Davy said. He pushed his blanket aside and folded it to a bedroll. A cowboy sleeping around the campfire would soon wake up hungry for breakfast. And the cowboys ride in from watching the cattle all night would be even hungrier. A big longhorn steer with the hide so black it nearly looked blue lumbered up to Davy and nudged his hand. Old Blue, Davy said softly, are you hungry too? Old Blue grunted and shook his widespread horns. Davy laughed. You think you're better than all those other longhorns. Who ever heard of a big old steer sleeping around the campfire with the cowboys? He patted Old Blue's shiny forehead. You're the smartest old steer I ever saw. Not many ranchers own a steer who can lead all the rest of the cattle on a trail drive. Davy hurried over to the chuck wagon to help Cookie. He was frying bacon in a black skillet over the fire. Pa said I can ride today, Davy exclaimed. Huh? Guess you'll feel like a real big shot, Cookie said. Davy smiled. He would be riding up front with the cowboys who guided the longhorn cattle over the trail. And if Pa said it was okay for him to ride, then it was. Pa was the trail boss. You're a lucky boy. Not many young fellers get a chance to go ride on a trail, Cookie told him. If Ma hadn't gone to take care of Aunt Claire's new baby, I could have never came, Davy said. You can learn plenty on the trail, Cookie said. But right now, there's plenty to do here. Let's get to work. He handed Davy some tin plates to set out. Come and get it, Cookie yelled, while the cowboys crowded around the chuck wagon. Davy finished his breakfast. He took a handful of food scraps to Old Blue. The big steer was still eating biscuits and bacon crumbs. When Pa bought a horse for Davy to ride, let's get moving, Pa said. You watch what you're doing up front with Old Blue. Yes, sir, Davy said. Being a little shaky, Pa asked. Davy nodded. I felt the same way on my first trail drive, Pa said. You'll be fine. Davy put on his hat, he climbed onto his horse and followed Old Blue up to the head of the herd. One of the cowboys gave the old Texas call, ho cattle, ho, ho, ho. Soon the steers were strung onto a line a mile long with Old Blue leading. There were over 1,000 of them. Davy watched Old Blue walk steadily to the north. No one understood how Old Blue knew directions so well. Sometimes Old Blue walked too fast, and the lead cowboys or point men had to slow him down. I don't like the looks of the sky, one of the cowboys said. It could be a norther. Davy shivered. A norther might bring icy weather, and they had a long ways to go. They had left the Goodnight Ranch in Palo Duran Canyon, Texas, a week ago. It would take 2 months to bring the herd to Dodge City, Kansas. There the longhorns would be shipped on rail cars to Chicago. Davy guided his horse past tumbleweeds, rolling slowly in the breeze. Sand crunched under hooves and rose on little gold clouds. Cattle often tried to stop and eat dry clumps of grass, and when they wandered into low mesquite trees, the cowboys tried to drive them back to the herd. Davy looked at the big steer. Old Blue, you've got your work cut out for you. Here comes the river. We got to get across before the wind changes. The water was icy, but Old Blue plunged right into it. Cattle and cowboys followed. Ho, cattle, ho, 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 Davy yelled. The cold water splashed into his face. His horse stumbled and Davy held on tightly. Keep going, he said, don't fall. As horse began to swim, it seemed like a long time before they reached the other side of the river. As the cattle came out of the chilly water, they started running to get warm. 1,000 longhorns pounding in the dusty ground. Let them run, Pa shouted. Old Blue would slow them down soon. By late afternoon, the sky grew dark. A streak of lightning flashed. Thunder boomed. There was another sound too. Horns rattled together and hoofs pounded the dirt. Stampede, Pa cried. Get out of the way, Davy, he yelled. Davy rode his horse away from the frightened steers. He watched the cowboys guide Old Blue around in a circle. The cattle followed. Soon most of the herd were running in a big circle they called was milling. It was one of the ways to stop a stampede. Whoa, boy, Davy cried, trying to claim his horse. The air was full of electricity. Dave could see sparks dancing along the brim of his hat and on the tips of the horse's ears. Paul had called it foxfire. It even sparked from horn tip to horn tip over the milling cattle. As soon as the herds had settled down, Davy rode back to camp. Cookie was at the chuck wagon building a fire. Get your slicker on, Cookie said. It's going to be a bad night. Davy put on his slicker and ate some cold biscuits and beans. He drank hot coffee to get warm. The wind is cold, Davy said. Pa rode up to the chuck wagon. We'll need every man in the saddle tonight, he said. You can't let those longhorns stampede again. Do you want me to ride, Davy asked. Pa nodded. I can use your help. Davy pulled his hat lower over his eyes and rode out with the other cowboys. Before midnight, the rain turned to sleet. Davy could hear someone singing in the back, keeping the cattle calm. Whoopity-yi-yo, get along, little doggies. If the longhorns stampeded in the storm, some could get lost and freeze before they were found. It was the longest night Davy could ever remember. The sleet turned to snow. Davy couldn't even see Old Blue. By daylight, the worst of the storm was over. The cowboys took turns eating breakfast. Davy stood by the fire trying to get warm. You okay, Davy? Pa asked. Just cold, Davy told him. Do you want to ride in the wagon with Cookie? Pa asked him. Davy shook his head. No, sir. Good boy, Davy. Cookie, how do you even figure fire going all this snow? That's my secret, Cookie said. Hey, look who's here, Davy said. Old Blue came close enough for a bit of Davy's biscuit. Old Blue, I almost lost you last night, he said, rubbing the steers between his horns. When we get to Kansas City, I'm going to buy you a big bell to wear around your neck. Then I'll always know where you are, Davy said, and so are the cattle. Nobody has ever belled a leader steal, Paul said, but no steer was ever as tame as Old Blue. It's a good idea if it works. Davy, you don't have to wait until Kansas City. I've got a bell in the truck wagon that you can use, Cookie told him. I'll get it. He came back with a brass bell and a piece of rope. Davy tried the bell around Old Blue's neck. There you go, Old Blue. How do you like that? Old Blue shook his horns and listened to the bell clang. Just look how proud the old steer is, Paul said, laughing. Davy gave Old Blue a hug. He shook his horns again and rang the bell louder than before. The longer could smile, Old Blue would have.